Good morning, everyone. Today, we are moving into a critical area of risk management that often escapes the technical manuals, but defines the actual success of any security strategy. The interplay between fundamental risk concepts. As we've discussed, concepts like risk tolerance, trust, and organizational culture do not operate in a vacuum. Instead, they form a complex web where one variable dictates the movement of another. For instance, an organization's internal culture, alongside its established governance structures, will often dictate the actual pace of change and how effectively a risk management strategy is implemented on the ground. As risk executives or decision makers, you must develop a sophisticated appreciation for these relationships. They can produce unintended consequences, both positive and negative, that aren't always visible on a spreadsheet. Let's look specifically at the relationship between governance, risk tolerance, and trust. At Tier 1, the organizational level, the risk executive function is responsible for establishing how risk information is shared with external entities. Here we see a direct correlation. Organizations with lower risk tolerance, meaning they have a very low appetite for potential loss, will almost invariably require more supporting evidence of due diligence from their partners. In these low tolerance environments, we often see the direct historical trust model. This is a model where trust is not granted based on a certificate or a third-party audit, but rather on a long-standing, successful relationship between the two entities. If you haven't worked with them for 10 years, you don't trust them. Furthermore, an organization's centralization, the degree to which decision-making authority is concentrated at the top, often reflects its willingness to trust. We see decentralized governance structures for several reasons. Sometimes it's due to widely diverging mission areas, or a need for separation of duties because of the sensitivity of the work. However, decentralization also influences risk tolerance. If an organization cannot find partners that meet its strict trust qualifications, a less risk-tolerant entity might demand what we call validated trust. This requires the partner to provide granular evidence, access to their internal risk assessments, security plans, and even their security assessment reports before a partnership can proceed. This brings us to the interplay between trust and culture. Cultural norms often clash with new mission requirements. Imagine a mandate to interconnect systems to facilitate faster information sharing. This requires a higher acceptance of risk than the organization might be used to. In the short term, you might use transparency measures to build that trust. But over the long term, these measures are intended to evolve the actual beliefs and norms of the staff. We also see this in decentralized structures where there are gaps or overlaps in responsibility. These organizations are often slower to embrace change because they lack the coordinated trust necessary to move quickly. Even when directed by a higher authority, what we call mandated trust, an organization with a culture of tightly controlling information may still be reluctant to share. They will default to requiring concrete evidence of protection from the partner before a single byte of data is released. Now, let's pivot to how these cultural and trust-based factors manifest in the checkbook, specifically the link between investment strategy and risk tolerance. Every organization today must recognize the reality of the Advanced Persistent Threat, or APT. These are sophisticated adversaries who likely already have some degree of foothold within the environment. How a leader chooses to invest against an APT is a direct reflection of their risk tolerance. A less risk-tolerant organization will focus its capital on defensive technologies designed to prevent lateral movement and limit the blast radius of an attack. They are willing to sacrifice mission benefits, such as the speed and efficiency of automation, if it means the adversary is blocked. Conversely, a more risk-tolerant organization might prioritize the mission benefits of high-speed automation and connectivity, accepting the fact that an adversary might gain some advantage from compromising the infrastructure. They view the risk as a secondary cost of doing business at high speed. This leads us to the fundamental question: how do we actually identify organizational risk tolerance? It is not a single number. Rather, it is a blend of two things: the cultural willingness of the staff to accept loss and the subjective risk-related actions of senior executives. When you sit in a boardroom to establish risk tolerance, you are essentially examining the values and norms of that entity to understand why certain trade-offs are made. For organizations dealing with highly sensitive data, such as personally identifiable information, PII, or classified intelligence, the cultural emphasis is almost always on preventing unauthorized disclosure, the confidentiality pillar of the CIA triad. However, in other sectors, the culture is driven by the necessity of ongoing operational capability. In these environments, the emphasis shifts toward availability. They cannot afford for the system to go down, and their risk tolerance reflects that priority. Ultimately, to establish this tolerance accurately, one must perform a formal risk assessment. This process identifies the specific kinds and levels of risk the organization faces by weighing both the likelihood of an event and the potential impact of that event. As we will see in Chapter 3, this assessment is the engine that drives the entire risk management process, ensuring that the interplay of culture, trust, and governance is captured in a way that allows for informed, senior-level decision-making.